our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Monmouth in the flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to another elevated episode of It Slays Podcast. Yes. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
This is the Ethel Cain vinyl you're never gonna get, Mike.
And last but not least, it's Colton.
And it's, I'd say it's like, our second favorite time, next to just recording a new episode. It's another episode of just the boys.
The Sausage Fest.
We're back. We just had to make sure that it kind of sounded like Gill liked this movie, so we made sure that she couldn't talk about it. And... yeah, we're just rude like
I still like the idea that we should have done Ginger Snaps too, just because she wasn't going to make it, that we were kind of talking about before we started recording.
Surprise, yeah, Jill, you're actually listening to
twist.
Ginger Snaps too.
The knife twist.
But, yeah, so we'll get into what we have been watching, what have we been consuming, books, media, all that good stuff. Mike, what have you been doing?
Not a lot, honestly. I've been keeping up on my Yellow Jackets and Drag Race. I bought, as I texted you, I'm actually very excited to read this. One of my favorite childhood horror trilogies, which is Cheerleaders by R.L. Stine, part of the Fear Street series. They reissued it very recently, all in one volume. Well, so... there's like the original trilogy, and then they put out a couple of other ones after, which are only kind of like you don't really need to read them. So the only ones anyone cares about are like the first three, and they're all bound in one volume. And they changed the name to True Evil instead of Cheerleaders, which is kind of stupid. But all in all, I can't wait to read it and see how it doesn't hold up, decades later.
Is it for kids like Goosebumps, or is it like a YA series, or
it's a YA series?
Okay.
It's like high schoolers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, they were relatively I read all of the YA horror books when I was a kid, and they were probably among the most tame were the R.L. Steins, but the Cheerleaders books did have a few kind of grisly, gruesome parts, so I think that's why everybody likes them the most.
Gotcha.
And also, I'm reading John Langan's The Fisherman for the Every Horror Movie on Netflix podcast Discord book club.
Yeah, what do you think?
I'm not very far into it, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I've only ever read a chapter or two of that. It's just one of those classic, I heard it's a cosmic horror book or something, and I was just like, oh, right up my alley. I read a chapter or two and just drop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad or anything. It's just that's how I read nowadays. 50 pages
me
max.
Too. Yeah, it's I really got to power through even a good book. So
for sure.
What about you, Colton?
Oh, I've been watching a bunch as per usual. Rowan and I did another Now Slaying on the new Shudder original, The Unheard, which featured a great performance by Lachlan Watson, but in my opinion, pretty much everything else was kind of mediocre. And so I think I said on the episode as much. I've probably forgot the specifics by the next time we record, and I was right. So if you want to hear us kind of go into a little bit more in depth on that, just check out that episode of Now Slaying. Something else that may be of interest to our listeners is that I watched Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 for the very first time the past week. Kind of started a little bit of a riot in our group chat, I guess, just because I'm one of those
divorce.
that I wound
up... divorce.
Yeah, I wound up preferring number 5 over 4. Which is a very hot take. I've kind of looked around to see if there was even other people like me, and I don't know if there really is.
There isn't. There's nobody like you.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me,
you're Rennie Harlan's new favorite person, the one soul lover. Didn't he do 5?
Oh God,
no,
I don't know.
Rennie Harlan did 4.
Oh, I forget who did 5.
Yeah. I
think it was Stephen Hopkins or something.
Stephen Hopkins, you got it, Mike. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Listen, Nightmare on Elm Street is my jam.
Yeah. So just I don't know. I find the movies a lot of the time, they kind of slow down and they kind of like over-explain the dream logic, kind of like to a point that it winds up making me think like, why did we bother slowing down for this? Because we're either going to throw it out in the next movie or even within the next 10 to 15 minutes. Like, it's just kind of, in my opinion, almost like a waste of time a lot of the time, where the Dream Child doesn't even do that. It just kind of half-assedly explains some of it and then hand waves it. And really, it's just a bunch of nonsense for the next 90 minutes. So I enjoyed it. It had some really good sets that were well designed and visually interesting. I thought the kills were a lot of fun and inspired and, had some good practical effects and whatnot. And honestly, I just had a lot more fun with it than I did the Dream Master. So I am like willing to admit that the Dream Master is probably actually a better movie because it's actually trying to be a movie. But like the Dream Child, I don't even know if it attempts to really make much sense. It's just a bunch of nonsense. And for whatever reason, like I was in the mood for that evening. So I had a lot of fun watching that. And
I have a theory.
What's your theory? Go for it.
That you definitely like some of the characters in 5 a bit more.
Oh, that might be the case, yeah. I don't know if it was a big theory
I feel
or not.
like...
Just...
No, that was, I don't know, but I was like...
You're like, I have this... It's like, no, more so I liked Freddy Krueger running around as like this little weird infant that reminded me of the Xenomorph when it does the chest bursting and goes running around in Alien. Or, I don't know, I liked when that one girl gets overfed and her cheeks just balloon like some like cartoon.
That is a great scene.
It's just a bunch of nonsense. That's the thing. It was just so fun that I enjoyed it, where once again, number 4, it does get bogged down a little bit to actually explain things, to actually be a movie, like where this is just like, it's the 5th iteration. You're here, you're watching it. Nobody really cares. This is, this girl is pregnant and she's bringing people into dreams and they just kind of like go yada yada. Let's get to Freddy killing people, which is what I'm there for essentially. But yeah, also I checked out the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves. Rowan, did you go see that? Are you a Dungeons and Dragons guy?
I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons guy. I feel like everyone I know plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And I remember kind of the first trailers they put out of it. I was like, this looks like shit. But then they all of a sudden like pulled those trailers, like recut them, put different music in them, and everyone I know that saw it loved it, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was perfectly fine. Like, I went in with really low expectations, but then, similar to like what you said, I was hearing that it was really good and had these really high like critical scores and whatnot. And honestly, it does have a few like set pieces that are really interesting, like one of which that involves like a shapeshifter following a heist where they gotta like change into all sorts of these magical creatures in order to escape, and it's done in kind of like a one-shot tracking sequence, or, obviously it's a bunch of CGI, so they're faking it, but it's still inspired for a modern blockbuster. And there's another one that's essentially just full of the portal gun and portal logic from the video game Portal, where they're like using that and like they stretch it as far as it could possibly go in a movie, like making use of that concept, and it's really cool. I really enjoyed that as well. But outside of like those set pieces, I kind of wanted more. The humor of the world just really didn't fit. It was very irreverent, just kind of making fun of itself the entire time. It was almost like if you took the MCU's writing and then dropped it in like the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies or something. Just like, it just constantly, in my opinion, kind of clashed with one another. Like, it didn't really elevate it at all. It was just like the people that were there that wanted to see probably Dungeons and Dragons like done like Lord of the Rings, like taking itself seriously, they're not going to get that. They're constantly making fun of everything. And honestly, I just think Chris Pine is a worse Star-Lord sort of character than Chris Pratt. He just, I don't know, he kind of phoned it in a little bit for me. So yeah, it was better than expected, but still nothing special in my opinion. And mentioning Chris Pratt, last night I went out and checked out the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Movie? I thought it was a meme online.
It's a real movie, and it's real Chris Pratt doing his voice, and it wasn't quite as bad as I expected his voice. They kind of address it right away within the first 5 minutes of the movie. They very much pointed out. And I don't know if I'd go so far to call it like a good movie, but I think the animation is like absolutely gorgeous. And after it kind of finds its footing in terms of its pacing and the comedic sensibilities, I was like along for the ride. The kids in my audience, man, they absolutely loved it. Like, they were freaking out the entire time. There was a little girl that was probably no more than 3 or 4 who sat directly behind me. And when Princess Peach first appeared on screen, she like squealed like so loud and was like, it was just adorable, right? Like, I was like, oh my God, I was kind of happy that I was just happy that there were so many people that cared about Mario of all different ages. Like, it's still very relevant, Mario is. I thought the Luma, the little star character from Super Mario Galaxy games, was excellent. Had me in stitches every single time they appeared. Jack Black absolutely kills it as Bowser. And I couldn't believe that in the third act, Mario accidentally commits 9/11, which... if you have seen it and have a sick sense of humor like myself, you might understand what I mean. It was a kind of a baffling decision. So yeah, I don't know. I recommend the Super Mario Brothers movie. If you go in kind of expecting like a threadbare kids movie stuffed full of references to the games that you loved in your childhood and not much more, I think you'll get that. I enjoyed it, Me and my friends all had a great time with it. And like I said, the kids were insane. Like, the theater was absolutely packed and it was electric. People absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. What about you, Rowan? I know you saw the Super Mario Brothers movie as well.
Yeah, well, I figured I'd start with the two that you already mentioned. So
yeah, go for it.
Super Mario Brothers, me and Auxilia went and saw it. We went and saw it at a late show, so it was actually just adults in it.
Oh, okay.
I did check, because my theater... And I always complain about my theater being this rural theater. It had 12 showings on Friday of it.
Wow.
And almost every single one was sold out except the
that
late
is wild.
one. I think the late show, there might have been like 10 or 20 of us there. But it was a good time because it was all adults. I'm pretty sure 70% of us were like baked out of our minds and are like drunk or whatever. Like... It was adults ready to have a good time. And I thought the same thing, like, is it the most amazing kids movie I've ever seen? Like, not really. But, like, the references were fun. Like, I was like, if I was a kid, I would think this movie is fucking awesome.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, like,
yes.
It is gorgeous. Everything you said, I'm pretty much exactly the same with it. Like you said, we did watch The Unheard from for Now Slain, and I think I was a little higher on it than you were.
A little bit, yeah.
Not too much, but I did enjoy it. A couple other. Usually, I'm always talking about non-horror movies, but I'll save those for a little later. I did watch a couple horror movies that I kind of missed. I got to watch Uma finally. Starring Sandra Oh.
Oh, God, I was like, Thurman?
Yeah, Uma Thurman.
The documentary, yes.
Yeah. And, it was not very good. I knew going into it that everyone really didn't like it, and it wasn't very critically well received.
Yeah.
But, I always have a little hope, and it's Sandra Oh, so I was like, okay, like...
Queen of everything.
But yeah, it was like just maybe like a hair above like a TV movie. Like it just looked cheap.
God.
It just didn't look great. And I was gonna go on a rant in my Letterboxd review, and I opted not to. But I don't know. I'm finding, which is weird because Uma isn't an Amazon Prime like exclusive or anything, but they must have a filter they put on their stuff in the streaming service, because I feel like everything I watch on Amazon Prime has this look to it.
It's funny. I've never noticed that on Amazon Prime per se, but I also don't watch a lot of their original programming. But on Netflix, I was always complaining about how everything looks the same. So I at least get what you're saying.
Well,
yeah,
and I'm not kind of the opposite.
Services.
I watch quite a few of the like Amazon exclusive things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, they definitely have a look, and the look is like a little above soap opera. Like it's just kind of weird. So yeah, I didn't really like that. I got a chance to check out Master, starring Regina Hall. I actually really, really like that. I know most people were lukewarm on it. I thought it kind of worked because I also, like Uma, went in like expecting nothing, and I was like, this is gonna suck. And I know that everyone's like, Jordan Peele, because if it's about race, everyone's like, Jordan Peele. But I thought for like, just something that went straight to streaming, essentially, like, I thought it was effective. It was kind of weird because I wouldn't even say like the horror worked in it, but the story around the horror and like these microaggressions of racism in academia and university, I thought worked really well just as a story by itself. I almost thought it would have been interesting as like a one-off episode of like Dear White People or something. Like it was kind of in that vein, and I was like, this would have worked as like a show or something like that.
Yeah, I think if I would have saw it at the time when you did, when like people were kind of like, it's all right. You know, I probably would have been, maybe enjoyed it a little bit more as well. But I watched it at Sundance, and it was very much like, obviously, as you said, race and horror. Everyone was saying like, oh, it's the new Jordan Peele, esque horror movie. And like, oh, she made this sort of voice. It's, very much in a similar vein. So I went in with higher expectations, and I was kind of like, I kind of did like the points that you were talking about, though, like racism in academia, and kind of like how these deeply seated issues are kind of have always been there. I like that she kind of brought a lot of that to light. That was good.
Yeah, and Regina Hall was Regina Hall's
she's great,
amazing in it. But yeah, she was really good in that. The last horror thing I watched, I can't really tell you what I thought of it, but you'll have to go join Patreon, because our newest episode of Stream Screams is on Evil Bong 666.
Okay, I never knew that was for Stream Screams, and I even listened to the most recent episode. I must have blocked that out.
Basically what happened was it was supposed to be Tremors 7.
Yeah, what happened to that?
Tubi took it off of Tubi in America and Canada. So we couldn't do that to the people. We had to make sure that it was something they could watch. So one of Gill's picks was Evil Bong 666.
Now, I'm not familiar with the Evil Bong movies, but there's a bunch of them, right?
I think there's like 8 now. There's like 8 or 9.
All right.
You can buy like $200 box sets for this bad boy. Like,
oh God.
Same company that does Puppet Master and, Ginger Dead Man, all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so let me briefly just talk about the non-horror stuff. So, I was inspired by Colton last episode. I finally saw John Wick 4, and it was sexual. It was everything I wanted.
I never even messaged you about it. You just sent me, I think, like a loud fuck yeah or something, like when you finished the movie, and I never responded. I was busy at the time or something. I never even realized that. I saw you give it a 9, a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Yeah, I was shocked.
I really liked it. And, I've been pretty vocal. Like the first John Wick, I really enjoy. I enjoy all the John Wicks. I think they're pretty high tier action stuff. Mm-hmm. But this was like a whole nother level. I was very apprehensive going in because it was a 3-hour runtime pretty much. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. But like, I could have went for 3 hours more. It's beautiful. Like the entire movie is gorgeous.
100% agreed there. Yeah.
I think I said in my Letterboxd review, like I cannot wait for this like in 4K on my 4K TV. Like all the stuff in Japan and just like the flowers and it's neon. They knew what I wanted. I also mentioned that I had to look it up because I thought the music was Disaster Piece. Because I was like, this literally sounds like the It Follows soundtrack. Like there's these little tinges. And I looked it up. It wasn't. It was like some French artist or something. But I mean, the music slaps. Like Justice is in this for music. And it's just like some really good electronic music. And just
it's like a French rendition of like Paint It Black or something at one point, isn't it? It's kind of weird. Yeah, I remember that.
But it's just like, it's going to be sad if this is the last one. I mean, I just highly doubt it is. This made so much money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Obviously, it was kind of a sad time. Even, I'm seeing it like a week or two after it came out, but the theater was so packed and people were audibly upset when Lance Reddick,
is
what
happens with his character in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just, but you know what? It was like kind of an awesome send out for him. And
agreed. Yeah.
And I was just sad because Lance Reddick is the man. But yeah, and then I'm not going to go into it, but other than that, like I rewatched 1 and 3 just because they were the ones that I didn't remember the most of. Because I've seen 2 more times than I think the other ones. And yeah, that's all I've been watching. But yeah, so I think it's time to get into the episode. This was your pick, Colton. Do you want to introduce it?
Sure, yeah. I don't know if it was much as my pick or that it was just kind of like divine to be so. Just because my stepdad, he recently canceled his Netflix subscription like due to them cracking down on the account sharing here in Canada.
As he should.
And he picked up a Shudder subscription instead. Yeah, so The Lodge was one of the first things he and my mom decided to watch together. So when I was kind of discussing the movie with my mom, she was kind of referencing a bunch of little moments in the movie or asking me what did I think, this meant or what I thought of that. And I just couldn't really remember it all that well because I watched this when it first came out. It's been, 2 or 3 years now. So I was kind of like, I got to rewatch that. And it's been on my list for ages to pick it. So with that and my, mom and stepdad recently watching it, I clicked shuffle on my letterbox list and I happened to get it. So I said, screw it. There's too many things aligning. It's that time of year where we're still a little bit, wintry here in Newfoundland. So it kind of made sense to pick it. So after our last couple of picks, I thought it was time to elevate things a little bit.
So with that, let's get into the trailer. Then we'll get back with the synopsis and talk more about how your life's depressing because it's winter over there.
I'm gonna marry Grace. It's important to me that we give her a chance. I don't want to leave you here with the kids if you're not feeling...
I'm feeling fine. My phone's dead. What is this? Where are my things?
We're stuck here.
Yeah! Is this some kind of joke? I heard something. Please help me. Please protect me.
The Lodge was directed by Severin Fiala and Veronica Franz and written by Sergio Cassi, Severin Fiala, and Veronica Franz, and the story is as follows. Following their mother's suicide, emotionally scarred siblings Aiden and Mia find themselves stuck with their father's new girlfriend, Grace, at a remote cabin in the woods for the holidays. But when their father must leave on business for a few days just before Christmas, the siblings get a chance to show Grace how they really feel, and with it, bring to light the demons from Grace's dark past.
You know where we're starting first. It's our first experiences with this movie, our first time seeing it, or are you just elevated in your life in general, and all you watch is The Lodge to stay elevated? I mean, we kind of know you saw it, Colton, but did you have any more to add there? Yeah.
Yeah, I first checked this out. It happened to be probably about a week or two into the COVID lockdowns in 2020. So obviously, I was very much feeling the vibe of stuck in my house. I think right at the time I was recently laid off, so probably feeling a little bit down and kind of like in a slump of not really watching too many movies, but this recently, I think at the time, came on VOD. And I said, screw it, I haven't watched a good horror movie in a while, and it was getting decent reviews. So yeah, I just threw it on like after midnight, watched it, and I was completely kind of sucked into it. I remembered very much enjoying it, despite it being a little bit of a slow burn, and yeah, I just kind of vibed, I guess, a little bit with how bleak things looked at the time and how dark and dour the movie is. So yeah, that was my first time seeing it. This was only my second. Like I said, I've been meaning to rewatch it.
Were you watching it like while you were on your computer, starting up your first OnlyFans page, trying to make money during COVID?
No, I was more so licking my wounds and, just sitting on my couch depressed that I was recently laid off more so than anything else. I never started the OnlyFans phase yet.
Oh, I was going to say that could work if you were licking them on OnlyFans. So
get out of here. My mom might be listening to this episode. What about you, Mike? This your first time seeing it?
It was actually, yes, yep. I remember when the trailer came out for it, I was like very intrigued because it looks like my type of movie, and Riley Keough was in it, who I love, but for whatever reason, it got lost in the mix, maybe because like round about the time it came out, like everything was just topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
But I also, like, I'd think about it every now and then and go, oh yeah, what was that Riley Keough movie where she's like out in the cabin in the woods or whatever, and I would always then confuse it because people were posting a lot about, like, I think it's called like The Night House or something.
Yeah,
and I kept thinking that was that, and I kept mixing the two of them up, and so I just never got around to like seeing either of them.
I think The Night House is also on my list of things to choose for this show, so who knows if I'll ever get to it, but yeah.
Well, take it off the shuffle next time. I can't do any more Cabin in the Woods movies right now.
Right.
Yeah, so then when you said that we were doing it and I looked it up and went, oh, that is the Riley Keough one that I kind of wanted to see. So that it was a good excuse to watch it. So this was my first time. What about you, Ro?
Yeah, so this is my first time seeing it. I bought it when it came out on Blu-ray, and I was saying before we started recording, I just took the wrapping off of it last night to watch it. I had seen the trailers. I was really interested in it. It had one of my good best friends, fellow It actor, Jaden Martell, who I've obviously never met in my life. So But, you know, I know him as Bill and, or I guess non-stuttering Bill in the new.
Is that who that was? I was trying to figure out why he looked familiar. Yeah, okay.
He's also the little Nazi kid in Knives Out, the one that's stuck in the bathroom the entire movie.
But, yeah, I was interested in it. I mean, I knew it had, like, some cult stuff and some religious stuff and, you know, creepy kids, so I'm always into that kind of thing. So I had never opened it. I was excited to watch it. I was a little hesitant to watch it, because I'll say this now. Kind of everyone I listen to on other podcasts all over and some, like, professional reviewers and stuff all shitted on this movie. So I came in, I'll just let you know, automatically assuming this was dog shit. So I had never opened it. And I think it was because of that, because everyone I had heard talk about it was just like, worst movie I've ever seen in my life, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's where I will leave it. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of things. Start off with our favorite scene and or favorite kill. Colton, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know if this is really a movie that has these like great scenes that kind of stand out. It's more so just a movie that constantly builds dread and almost casts a spell on you as you're watching it, and you're kind of either into it by the end or you're not. And you're kind of left feeling like, well, that was a waste of time, or what did I just watch? I guess the kind of like just give an answer to the question. One of the moments in the movie that I do really like is when Grace kind of builds up the courage to confront Aiden about their kind of discomfort between each other in the cabin, and about how he was like watching her in the shower and stuff like that. I think it's a good showcase of like Riley Keough's like acting abilities in the movie. She's, in my opinion, just great as Grace the entire time in this movie.
Fantastic.
But also just, you know, Jaden Martell is really good. I've seen him in a load of things, and it was just nice to see him be a little bit less of the disinterested teen with the headphones on, even though that's how he starts the scene, just to have a little bit of fire and a little bit of, you know, back and forth, you know, obviously conflict and the verbal sparring between the two. It's not really like this flashy scene or anything, but once again, this is a movie that's not really full of flashy scenes. But it was just kind of like, when I was thinking, it's like, I did really like that moment, and it's also kind of one of those moments where it's like you kind of really see Aiden's disinterest of this woman kind of turn from just like being like annoyed to like actual like hatred, like can't stand to be around her. So I enjoyed that scene. I don't know if it's truly my favorite scene, but when I was kind of racking my brain, that's kind of what popped out. What about you, Rowan?
I'll go with this. I won't be so morbid. I think my favorite scene is when we kind of get when, you know, Grace is wandering outside and we get like the cross cottage. She's like hallucinating this cross cottage with like her deceased father in it. And like, I thought it looked really good. It was like eerie and beautiful. And that was really my favorite scene. And I don't say that to like disrespect the movie. Like, to me, that encapsulated, like, I thought the movie like looked fantastic in general. And I was trying to go against, you know, typecast here, where I was going to say when the dog died, but that wasn't 'cause the dog died, guys. It was like, to me, it was also kind of the same thing. Like, it was like when the dread, to me, the dread's like, okay, this is like on a next level thing now. Like, the stakes are risen. And it's like you said, Colton, like a lot of this, it's hard to pinpoint because the movie is just a vibe. It's such a slow burn and it's such a vibe that it's kind of like extended scenes put together that you really have to vibe with. Mike, how about you?
Well, you know, we did acknowledge that nothing really happens in the movie, so it is hard to like.
I never said nothing happens. I just mean that it's not like. There's not like, oh, this specifically was a great scene. That's amazing. It's just kind of all on the same level.
Like
I think it's all
like
good.
Walking around, right? It's like stuff is happening, but it's not really happening.
Oh my.
Honestly, I just thought like the visual of when she's looking at the window and sees all the like snow angels in the snow.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a cool moment, you know, and it was like the only time the whole movie that I thought, maybe it's not the kids trying to drive her crazy. Which obviously lasted for like 60 seconds, and then I'm like, okay, wait, no. But yeah, I was watching and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. I like the, you know, it's cute because like it's the snow, but also like because of her religious trauma, you know, the fact that it's a snow angel also kind of has like that extra layer of like fucking with her head. And I just thought it was a cool visual. You know,
and it's also so many angels that it is one of the moments in the movie that kind of strains the plausibility that the kids could have done this. There's another moment, of course, like with Aiden when he kind of has the whole rigging set up for him to fake hang himself. It's like that's very complicated for someone to do correctly. So there's a couple of moments where it kind of strains credibility, but yeah, it was the one moment where I was like, oh, maybe this is something else. Maybe there is a cult. Maybe it's all in her head. Maybe there is some sort of demonic presence or forces at play or something. Yeah.
I thought overall, like, it did a pretty good job at kind of, you know, the 3 or 4 roads you could take of what's going on. Like, I thought it did a good job of always making me second guess myself, because going into it knowing what the trailer was, I was like, there's no way this is going to be an evil kids thing, because that's kind of what the trailer's like kind of alluding to.
Is that what it's implying?
Like, the trailer gives you kind of like, oh, is she crazy or the kid's crazy? And I'm like, all right, I was like, this is going to be an easy the kids are crazy type thing. So I think even though, you know, like later on we're revealed that like, yeah, like, you know, most of this movie is kids are crazy, but like me not thinking, like being like, no, that can't be it. And it did a good job of like kind of mixing like the fantastical in it with stuff like her hallucinations and her dreams. And yeah, like I thought that was really well done, where I was always like second guessing myself.
Yeah, it walks the line quite well between like divine intervention, you know, some sort of paranormal, you know, religious aspects, you know, demonic forces, spirits, whatever, then either a woman's mental health unraveling, you know, that sort of thing. And then it's also like the kids, you know, just being incredibly like mean-spirited and also just out of their depth, you know, things just kind of spiraling out of control. And also it also has the aspect of where I remember when I first watched it, I was like, oh, obviously like all these people just died in like a gas fire, or the heater, or, you know, they went crazy or something, you know, and now we're in a purgatorial state, right? It just, I don't know, it kind of brings up all these explanations for the movie, and they're all kind of well fleshed out. But I still think the main one of the kids just being assholes still works 80% of the time of the movie. That is a valid explanation, you know?
Yeah, fuck those kids. That's
they're awful. They're so bad. And the thing is like, I actually think Riley Keough's like Grace is actually like being pretty good for most of the movie. Like, obviously the point of view in the beginning is very much from the kids, but like, other than probably being like an adulterer, like, you know, cheating on the father, you know, when they were probably in a relationship, or, you know, being the other woman, I mean, I don't know. She doesn't really do too much in this movie to warrant being treated this way, other than being a woman that happened to come into these kids' lives, you know, 6 months after their mom passed away. She's not like a nasty stepmom or anything for most of the movie. Yeah. So it's just, it's funny, like, you dislike her so much just because it's from the kid's point of view, but the movie eventually kind of goes the other way, where it's like, oh, you're kind of in her head and from her point of view now, and you're seeing like these kids are little shits. It's interesting. I don't know. I enjoy it. Yeah.
I hated them from the minute they were on the screen.
The kids? Did you?
I absolutely hated them.
So did you know the twist, or like up front, like did you already know like the kids were going to be? Because Rowan
had no idea, but literally from the minute they got in the car, just knowing that, you know, she was going to mentally unravel, or that it was, I'm not saying this as a drag, that it was, you know, like a turn of the screw riff. That's one of my favorite stories ever. So, you know, I love it when people, you know, adapt it or take it as inspiration. I just like literally right from the beginning, I'm like, I knew what they were doing, and I hated them right from the beginning. So it kind of made like watching them try to like, I totally got what they were doing with the, you know, sort of trying to throw you off the scent and stuff. And I was just like, fuck, maybe it's just because like those two kids were such assholes right from the beginning. I did not doubt it at all.
It's so interesting because I never thought they were like assholes at all. And maybe it's just because, you know, as a kid coming from divorce, you know, I kind of get the idea of like having this person come into your life and you don't really want them around. You want your dad, or you want your parent. You don't want this person. So I didn't think the kids were actually like too much of an asshole until, you know, when they're literally like, okay, you're literally taking this woman's, you know, mental health medication away, or you're literally gaslighting her like beyond belief, you know, like torturing her essentially. Then I mean, it's very far, but
the actual definition of gaslighting,
actually, like literal, yeah.
People,
this is textbook. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. I actually really liked the kids in the beginning. Like I liked
Well,
Aiden.
okay, yeah. There is like a couple of minutes at the beginning where it's like you feel bad for them, but after that little tiny period of grace I gave them, I was like, no, they're unbearable.
Wow. Yeah, for me, it was just
my patience for kids in movies is like literally at the floor. So
I just don't know how you don't feel bad for Mia, like following the funeral scene where like her balloon, she's trying to send the balloon up with her mom's doll with a note on it and stuff, and the balloon won't fly, and then she's crying about how she's not going to get to heaven because she committed suicide. It's so bleak and dark.
Oh yeah.
And then the kid comes in and like holds his sister's hand as she's crying and stuff. I was just like, holy shit, this is heavy. This is
You're right.
I felt like such
but
a
also, I was
judgmental
like, for God's
bitch.
sake, get your head out of your ass. Like this heaven shit. Like
what were you judgmental about?
Yeah,
Rowan?
I felt like
the
a
religious aspects,
judgmental. Yeah, I just felt like a judgmental bitch because they're putting all those balloons up in the air, and I was just like, that is terrible
so
for the environment, fellas.
Yeah.
and then like I might have laughed when hers didn't go up. I was just like,
oh my God.
Jesus.
But listen, before we get like too far into the plot of this movie, I just I'm having a hard time here, guys, with my notes. Mike, can you remind me who plays the mother?
That would be a horrible waste of the one and only icon, Miss Alicia Silverstone.
I was very surprised. I had no idea she was in this movie.
No, neither did I. I was like, is that Alicia? Like, what?
Well, and I like because they basically screamed her because when I was looking at the Blu-ray and I'm looking at the trailers, stuff like that, like they top billed her for the movie. So
I didn't look at anything.
Oh yeah,
so
she was one of the top billings for this movie. So I was like, oh, this is like super interesting that we just she kills herself, which I don't know if it was and I know I don't admit this. I rarely admit this on this podcast, but it must have been I was also very tired when I watched this, but almost every single loud sound or jump scare got me in this movie. Every single one.
Well, this one I actually think is like really sudden as well because obviously it's set up that she still cares about her ex-husband, right? She's getting like all dolled up to go see him, and obviously she's going in, she's watching for the kids to go away because she's hoping something might happen between them, right? That there's still that love there despite being cheated on or despite, them moving apart, whatever happened. But the headshot, I remember when I was watching this, it was just like so matter of fact, just like straightening up all the books, getting everything in order, just literally like, I'm just going to make sure my house and my affairs are in order, then this is it. And it's just like so blatant. So, she's not like devastated really, it's just a little somber, but it was just brutal. I remember when I watched it the first time, I was so shocked. There's only one other movie that Mike may have mentioned in passing while discussing other movies that are, cabins on the woods or maybe A Night House, that there's a shot that surprised me as much. Like when I watched this movie, gunshots should be surprising, and most times in the movies you see them coming a mile away. This one is a little bit jarring for sure, and it should be.
Yeah, well, and it was even like the cheap tricks too, like when they're kind of first in the cabin alone and they use a jump scare like with the piano. And like I was even jumping at bullshit like that. I was like,
you were really tired then.
Yeah, I was really tired. But I mean,
you were probably literally drifting off and then just waking up because there's a loud noise.
Yeah. No, but like I mean, I guess it was a good thing though because it did work for me, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, like, and that's with those jump scares working, and then of course with all the kind of like religious iconography going on, which did Rowan have any fucking idea what it was? No idea. Like, until someone said it towards the end of the movie, I had no fucking idea who was in that painting. I was like, what is this painting of? I don't know. Just some old painting. And they're like, oh, it's Mary or whatever.
Yeah, Virgin Mary. Yeah.
I didn't know that, man. But all that stuff together was where I was buying into, like, the supernatural aspect, where I was like, all right, well, like, these kids aren't just, like, playing pianos and stuff and opening doors when they're in bed. So I just was like totally bought in to every thread, really.
Yeah, I like the idea of this movie. Like, there's so many movies where you have a cult or, you know, a religion at its center that's either like made up or it's, you know, it's heavily like perverted and whatnot. This one is just literally like, no, it's just they literally think, I think they say as much, that it's just an extremist Christian group. And like even like the scripture and what they're reading is just basically scripture and, you know, sermons.
Well, she says the Lord's Prayer at one point.
Exactly, you know,
Yeah.
that it's like, it's really interesting just to see that in a movie, you know, and not even like a demonic way, right? It's just literally like a brainwashed or cult like, you know, survivor, right? As like one of the main protagonists of the movie, or antagonist, depending on how you interpret it. For me specifically, like growing up from a Christian background, I really liked using the Nearer My God to Thee as kind of like the core song of the movie that's kind of being sang and kind of played in the score and whatnot. Also because that's like a popular like funeral hymn. So it's just literally like, it's just very fitting to use throughout the movie, and even have her sing it at the end to kind of bookend it all together. Like the implication going to be that she's about to kill them all. It's, you know, it's very dark. You know, it's I really liked kind of using that as the backbone of the movie.
Yeah, well, and I'm sorry, Colton's mom, but you know me, I just hate God and Jesus, but it works. Like to me, like the music works. The creepy church music always works. Even if you're like me, I'm like, there's something creepy about y'all music. It's just creepy.
There's something even scarier than the church music in the movie. Do you guys catch that quick scene of the Jack Frost movie?
Oh my god. You're like, Dad! I was like, fucking turn this shit off.
I love that they follow up The Thing. You know, they're committing the cardinal horror movie sin of showing like a better horror movie than your horror movie in your movie.
Literally your favorite thing in the universe.
Yeah, it's like such a great movie, right? Like a winter horror movie, love it. And then follow it up with Jack Frost. What a double feature. That's special.
I mean, I don't know if your new stepmom turns off The Thing and puts in Jack Frost, maybe she had all this coming to her. Maybe she was asking for it. There were some great references though. Did you guys catch they show like the off? Just okay. Let's start with this. They say this dad, he wrote a book, but he works for a newspaper. I need to know what newspaper, how I get this job, because this dad is baller. This dad's house is baller. Yeah. The inside...
The house kind of looked like something out of, like, Kubrick.
Yeah. And, like, just the architecture inside... Like the rooms it shows, especially when like
all of my notes were on that.
Oh, it was gorgeous. But they show like the TV room, and did you notice in the TV it was paused and it was sleepaway camp?
Yeah,
yeah. I was like, it was just the face of Angela like screaming up close.
I don't know how I didn't see that.
I thought Mike would be the one that noticed it, but I was like that.
I was also looking things up on my phone while I was watching it, so I probably was like distracted.
One reference I picked up on was just the dog being named Grady, obviously after Delbert Grady, you know, in The Shining, just, you know, previous caretaker of the Overlook who went crazy and killed his 2 children and his wife and then himself, you know, very much similar to what happens by the end of this movie.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the dollhouse stuff, because
we got to.
I wasn't a fan. I thought was the weakest part of it. I get how it was kind of cool at the end, because you're like, oh yeah, it was showing us like kind of stuff.
Premeditated,
all this stuff. But I just feel like, I mean, you know, before you started working on this movie, you would have seen Hereditary.
100%.
And it was like, there was a weird...
Or the better version, Sharp Objects.
Sharp Objects. But also, like, there was a weird, like, I don't know if they were, like, shooting it at a certain frame rate or something, but in my notes, I just had, every time it cuts to the dollhouse, it looks like a scene from Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I was like, I shouldn't feel like this.
Okay, I didn't feel like that, but I did like how they mixed sometimes shots you could tell from within the dollhouse to be like kind of like the establishing shots of the lodge itself. I did like that, like some of the hallway shots or, you know, shots of staircase and stuff, not the ones with obviously the dolls in the frame, you know. I did like that. It kind of at least merged it a little bit, but yeah, I don't know what they were thinking about using the dollhouse. You can't use miniatures in a horror movie for like another 10 years at least without everybody thinking of Hereditary. You know, it's such a crucial part of that movie that I was just kind of like, I would have went a different direction with this. It's fine having a character that loves her doll, and, you know, she even has her doll dressed like her mom and stuff. That's completely fine. But using just the mirroring of the dollhouse with the modern, you know, the lodge itself, and kind of cutting back and forth, it's just Ari Aster did that better, you know, I have to say. So,
well, I mean, let's be realistic. This whole movie just drips Ari Aster all over it. Like, I just felt like the tone, the depression I felt watching it, and obviously the dollhouse stuff.
Well, yeah, the tone, the really like bleak and dour tone. Like, I kind of wanted to maybe talk about it a little bit because, you know, grief being like the primary theme or driving factor in like elevated horror is just kind of, that's just been a thing, right? Like, it's very much like, it's the core of like Hereditary, you know, it's the core of Midsommar, it's the core of all of these movies that I wind up loving. But is it something that, like, are you guys just like a little bit tired of it at this point? Like, do you guys mind it? Like, obviously these movies all feel a little bit different, but it's kind of like you said, like when you're tying them all back to grief thematically, there is like a sameness to it as well, you know?
I didn't mind it per se, but it does become a little bit samey in a way, but like, I don't know, I always end up watching these movies when I'm like depressed in the middle of winter anyway, so I'm like, and they always end up having something in it that triggers me, so I'm like, can we move past grief for like 3 or 4 years and move to a different aesthetic and then circle back? Grief find
a new theme to everyone to use. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I spent all day like just always updating my Twitter because I was waiting for another Hereditary like tweet from Mike just cursing Colton's existence. That's why I had to let Mike go first.
Lie, I had one typed out and I didn't send it.
Oh God, I got to figure out what things trigger Mike because I'm not sure. I mean, the kid death or whatever was the thing in Hereditary, right? It was Charlie getting murdered.
Yes,
40 minutes in. Yeah. I mean, you don't see any kids get murdered in this movie, you know?
No, in this movie, I wouldn't give a shit. I hated these kids. I was more upset about the dog. The kids could have bit it the first 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, if we're going to go with dog deaths, we should have all complained about ginger snaps last week or last episode. I mean, there's half a dozen of them.
Listen, I thought even this dog death was heartbreaking. So,
yeah.
Well, this one is so mean-spirited because, like, literally
really
Grace talks to Mia about how important this dog was to her, about, like, her recovery, about how she got this dog when she felt well enough to take care of herself, but also take care of something else, right, in her life, you know, kind of put her life back together. And then, you know, it is implied that the dog accidentally got away as they were moving stuff upstairs to downstairs to kind of pretend that they were in purgatory. But it's such a brutal, like, beat. Like, I really felt for the Grace character when her dog was gone. It was literally, like, it was very much a catalyst that I think, like, you know, it just accelerated her, you know, mental unraveling, essentially, you know. And most times I'm very much, like, I'm not a pets person, you know. I do happen to have a dog at home in my family home, but it's still, you know, personally I probably wouldn't have a dog really, but, you know, so I don't feel too much when pets pass away in movies, or even if they get ripped apart or something, you know. It's kind of like, you know, it's a horror movie, what were you expecting? But this one did hit a little bit different, I think, just because of how you know, how Riley Keough like passed it off, like she was devastated, right?
Well, it's not just used as an easy like thing to have in the background that, you know, people are going to get squeamish about if it dies. Like, it's actually used as a like point in her like characterization, right? You know, like the dog in Ginger Snaps wasn't, for example. So no, you're right though. It is like, it actually goes out of its way to like put a little bit more emotional weight on this animal.
I didn't get a chance to answer Colton's question. I was too busy waiting for Mike's answer. I did want to say that I don't think I'm sick of the depressing stuff. I think these are what kind of, you know, leave that like lasting impression. Like, why I love Hereditary. That's my.
That's the.
I mean, I guess there is a beheading in it, but
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, Hereditary. You know what I really kind of thought of? Not that these really have any similarity, but I thought about like the first time I watched Speak No Evil, and I was like,
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and I was like, at the end of it, I was like, fuck this movie, fuck everything about it. And then I'm like thinking about it for a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I hated it because it was so depressing, and that's why I like love it now. And I'm like, this worked. Like, is it sad if I'm like, oh, it makes me feel something? But I mean that in a non-emo kid way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it does make you feel like lost or make you feel very cold and bleak and dour. I mean, it's the complete opposite of like leaving like a Mario movie or something, being like, oh yeah, that was great, that was a lot of fun. This is like, I feel miserable in a way. This hurts in a way.
I mean, that one character in Mario would be perfect for this movie.
That's true, yeah.
If they just ended the movie with that character, then it would have been awesome. But yeah, no, I think, and I always talk about like when we do like the more traditional stuff, when we talk about like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Streets and stuff, like a lot of the movies we talk about are movies that are iconic, we love, like aren't really scary. They don't scare me. Like a lot of that stuff doesn't work. Where I think this is where like my scare level comes into play is like just depressing and it's just like bleak and I'm just like, that's my version of being scared.
Listen, depressing, bleak books and movies and everything are my absolute favorite thing. They're like my jam. But I think it's like Colton said, the elevated horror just like always falls back on it. So here's what I want. I want non-elevated horror to take on more of that in it, and for elevated horror to take on more things that are actually horrific and a bit out there and sensational. You know what I mean? I want them to like walk a mile in each other's shoes. Maybe they'll both be better.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to raise the question.
You know what I mean?
It's just, it's kind of like an old trope where it's like, every elevated horror has to have some vague deity that we may or may not have heard of at its core, but it could also be mental health because, someone lost someone early on in the movie. And, it is kind of like, it's almost a little bit old hat at this point where you can kind of cobble together an A24-esque elevated horror movie by, kind of mashing all these movies together. You could very
it's like
much
playing bingo. It's the
you could very much
square in the middle.
Exactly, yeah. You can write a video essay between all these movies, even if they're not A24, and draw all these connections for sure. There's a lot of same DNA. And I would say also similar to Rowan, I'm not tired of it yet. I do like these bleak and depressing movies, but it's just something I'm cognizant of. I recognize it. Sometimes it feels a little bit rote or a little bit tropey. And this one, it still grabs my attention for most of it. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Now I do gotta shout out a scene I love because I always talk about it. I love a good scene where we're on a computer and we're doing some research. But the kids in the office, mixing, not that the writers and the directors had any ideas of these being the influences, but to me, it reminded me of two of my favorite things. One being Sinister, where we get like some lo-fi video file footage.
Yeah, it's like snuff footage basically of like the bodies after the
which is like
suicide.
Basically like a Jonestown suicide, which I loved. And also this crazy preacher, which just reminds me of one of my favorite video games, Far Cry 5. And that's all I can think about.
Which, by the way, I streamed like 6 months ago.
Oh, nice. That's one of the only like giant games that I like bought when it came out, played it to the end, played all the like 100% complete.
Wow.
I just love me some, I love me like some crazy like preacher, Southern preacher, any kind of preacher, like cult stuff. But I love that scene. I was all for that scene with the found footage stuff. And I love the tie-in at the end when we get like the kids at the table with the sin stuff.
Yeah.
I was all for that.
I love preacher characters in movies just because they're preachers so naturally just wax on for such a long time. And they're always speaking about themes and they're always speaking about deeper meanings and metaphor and whatnot, most of which a lot of the congregation at the time don't fully understand. But in a movie, it's like this mouthpiece that can kind of just tell you what is the movie about, and it feels like so natural. That's like Midnight Mass.
It's like the fool in a Shakespearean play.
Yeah. It's like a monologue, right? It's like, oh, cool, we get like the course telling us exactly what's happening in this act of the play or whatnot, right? I remember Midnight Mass, like people always complain about the monologues in that show, but I absolutely loved. I think it's the Father Pruitt character. He just would monologue on end about Catholicism mixing with essentially vampirism, and how all of his like sermons would kind of be double-edged, where he could be either talking about vampirism or be talking about Catholicism, and it was just very well done. So yeah, I'm very much into the preacher characters as well. in these horror movies. You know, a couple of things I've written that I've never finished had preacher characters in them as well, that I just always loved writing that sort of dialogue as well, trying to find the clever ways between Christianity or whatever religion you're kind of cobbling together and, you know, how it can bring out horror as well. It's very fun to listen to and to watch.
And they're always so over the fucking top.
Yeah, it's great,
like,
right? It's
always over the top.
They're the ones that would have
preachers
like
are drama queens. Like
they're the ones that would have like their television shows, right? That would have, you know, the big viewings, right? You kind of completely understand how this Charles Manson-esque character that we're watching on this video camera, that it's like, oh, I'd understand how he'd have a modest little following at least, you know?
Just wait till you see the Pope's Exorcist.
God, I can't wait for that. You still haven't seen the trailer for that, right?
No.
Good. Don't watch it. You just got to go in cold to that one.
I had an idea. I was thinking about these kids, and I'm like, these kids, they're bad as shit. But I'm like, I was thinking, why are they bad as shit? And then we see the first dinner that Grace and the dad and the kids have. And I notice what's on their plates and what's not on their plates. These guys just don't ever feed these kids vegetables. These guys are eating salad, and the kids, no salad. They're like, no vegetables for the kids. The kids are just eating this real shitty looking mac and cheese, but it's like baked in a square. It's just like gelatized hard.
Maybe they're picky.
They're clearly bouncing back from their mother being a like absolute like control freak about everything they put in their bodies. Remember when she was like, this is you can't have candy, you can't have like gelatin or flavors, and then he's like, you can eat whatever you want, like when they're getting ready to go. So clearly they're just eating garbage because, you know, he's like, that's their treat. It's like, your mom is dead, here's some gelatinous macaroni.
They've eaten just the McDonald's dollar menu every day, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Every single day.
I'm just saying.
The amount of those goddamn Happy Meal boxes that must be kicking around in their house.
I'm just saying, maybe talk to your teenage son, say, hey, you know what? Instead of, you know, being the next coming of Damien, maybe just eat some vegetables and shut the fuck up. I don't know.
I love how vegetables is like just solves every problem for you.
I mean, apparently. I'm just saying. Malnourished kids, man. These kids
social band-aids. Vegetables.
Rowan's like literally Popeye. You know, he wanted Jaden Martell to get big and buff. Just eat your spinach.
Just eat the spinach, guys. Well, I mean, this whole movie, the whole conflict, to me is really just the dad's fault. Like, it seemed like a terrible idea from the get-go to, he specifically says, like, Grace doesn't know how to cook. He basically says, like, doesn't know how to take care of kids. And he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave her with my two kids in this cabin that, like, seems to regularly storm and get, like, stormed in and see what happens.
To be a little bit fair to the dad, Grace does say it was her idea, that she did want to spend these 3 or 4 days alone with the children, but obviously it was in a way to get to know them and to maybe, you know, sympathize with them, or maybe even in her mind become like a mother figure. But once again, it's way too soon, and you kind of got to listen to your kids that they absolutely do not want anything to do with this, right? I think the dad kind of sucks in this movie as well, just overall. Like, I mean, Richard
also,
Armitage,
like, the fact that he, like, doesn't speak to her for, like, the whole time, and I'm sure they were feeding him some story, but it's like, I would want to talk to a single adult taking care of my children out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it works from the one side because obviously all of their phones go out of batteries, or they're hiding one phone that's connected to the Bluetooth speaker, whatever. But it doesn't work from the other angle. Like, imagine you're the father that's gone away on this business trip. There is cell phone service there, and you do not hear from them for like 4 days. Automatically, you'd assume that something really went sideways, right? Like, you know, I'd be worried. I'd be like, even if I'm on a very important business trip, I'd be like calling to get someone to go visit or check on them or something, right? So he is just a very absent father, and I do get that vibe when the mother meets up with him at the beginning, that he married essentially got involved with a younger, hotter woman, and basically was just kind of leaving his kids behind. She kills herself, and then basically he's forced to take care of these kids, right? It's this burden that's kind of pushed upon him, and he doesn't really want to, you know, let go of his younger girlfriend or fiance, essentially, right? He doesn't want to listen to his kids that they're not really interested at this point in having a relationship with her. It's just kind of tragic in a way that he's so shitty in the movie as well.
The only real other issues I had with it, like, there was like a couple like logical things, like, I was curious how they would have dragged her outside. I was just like, he's not that, like, the son's not very big. I'm like, I feel like it would be quite a hefty job to, like, drag her out in the middle of this lake or whatever, the frozen pond. And that my real big issue was, like, with the ending. The dad, I was like, are we not just, like, hitting this gun out of her hand or something? Like, charging for the gun? Like, I get, like, he's in love with her and all this kind of stuff, but, like, also his kids are there. Like, I just feel like there'd be an instinct to just jump at her and get the gun out of the situation.
For the dad in that moment, I kind of do read it as a little bit of ego, because once again, maybe this is me kind of doing the Rowan thing and projecting a secret story that's not on screen. But I kind of assume that this guy, like, through either writing a book on what happened or writing articles, he got very close to this woman that obviously has a very tragic and very bleak past that, like, she was working through. And I think he kind of believes that, like, he knows her better than she knows herself to a degree. Like, maybe that he believed that he could easily talk her down, or like, oh, I have been through moments where this woman's been a little bit manic or a little bit on edge based off what we've been discussing, and I know how to deal with it. I think it was like a misread on his part where he thought he was going to be able to gently lower the gun and kind of save what was happening here, is kind of what I read into that moment.
Typical
but I will
man.
concede that there's some moments, like you said, with Grace winding up outside or something, and, there's no trail in the snow or anything like that. It's like, how long has she been there? And in my head, I kind of looked at those moments always not as 100% literal. Sometimes it could have been literally like she walked out there. It could have been literally that she's losing her mind. So there was aspects of the movie after about an hour in, I think kind of it blurs the lines between, like, reality and, like, what's happening a little bit enough for me that I hand wave some of the more logic stuff. I think the first hour is pretty tight in terms of just, it makes a lot of sense. And then after that, it's kind of like the movie is like, it's blurring the lines between exactly what's happening, I think, after that point,
You brought up something that I was going to mention. Well, you sort of did.
Okay.
Just then. But, like, when Ro mentioned when they were, in the computer room, the office, the computer room, like, literally from when I was, like, 7.
Yeah.
I say that as if I had a computer. People I know had computers anyway. So I am, like, profoundly disturbed by their relationship in a way, because I'm like, it appears that he wrote a book or whatever before becoming involved romantically with her.
Yeah, when she was like a kid. She was like a teenager.
What the fuck are you thinking? Like, it was
it's super problematic. It's very
so many levels. Yeah, I was like, right from the get-go, I was like, this guy, like, holy shit, like, this is absolute bonkers, like, behavior. For a grown man with children.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, Colton, that I kind of took that too as like, all right, this is kind of showing like maybe he's not the best father, so that like kind of warrants some of these like bad decisions of, like showing her where the gun is, even though, maybe she's a little unstable, and having that confidence like, I'm controlling the situation and all that kind of stuff. Because like just the little kind of micro things, like at the beginning when he's like, oh yeah, here's money, like, kids, go get candy, like, go buy candy, and
yeah, let's get rid of him quick.
And he's obviously like always at work and all that kind of stuff, and it's just, I feel like a normal, like a present father isn't going to be like, yeah, I'm gonna, even though he's gonna marry this woman, it's like, I'm gonna basically leave you in a cabin with a stranger for a week and see what happens.
It's funny, for the gun ownership thing, it didn't rub me the wrong way that he showed her where the gun was, or like made sure she knew how to use it, just because, I don't know, animals, wildlife, who knows, out in that area. What made me wary of it was that the code for the gun lock was just 1 2 3 4 5. That I was like, that's brutal. Like, once again, it's just a very much like uncaring person, or like, not
you
thinking
have children.
very deeply. Yeah, exactly. Like, that would be like the first code anybody would
teenager,
try. Yeah. After, it'd be like 1 2 3 4 5, and then the next one would be like 1 1 1 1 1 9 9 9 9 9. Like, come on, come up with a better gun lock.
So did you guys have any other notes on this, or were you comfortable to get into reviewing it? are reviewing
Kind of the
it,
one thing I
rating it.
wanted, one of the one things I just wanted to kind of once again ask, just as slightly a bigger question. One of my things, just as I've been like writing or like trying to figure out things, is just I don't think there's like a lot of really like good winter horror movies. Like obviously The Shining and The Thing, but once you get past those, I find it like gets harder. It's weird like that. I watch this movie and I give it a little bit more in my head just because it is a winter horror movie. I really like winter horror movies. I think it's like ripe for a setting, just with how desolate and cold they are. I don't know. I just miss winter horror. I don't know if you guys can think of any other good winter horror movies off the top of your head, but I want more of them. Maybe it's due to budgetary constraints.
I can
or
think
something.
of my favorite.
Go for
than
it.
The Shining. Curtains.
I haven't even heard of it. Curtains.
Oh my god. Okay, guys.
Canadian classic.
Go. I was gonna say go buy the fucking Blu-ray if you don't have it, Ro.
I actually
what year
don't
is
have
it, Mike?
it.
Just so I can search it up.
1983, I believe.
Okay.
It is a
All
Canadian classic. It's a Canadian slashic.
Yeah.
As Shudder calls them.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'll maybe I'll try and check that out before next episode. I haven't even heard of it. Cool.
Yeah, I feel like someday
it's a
that'll
little
be
hidden
a pick.
gem.
That's becoming more and more such a big
I've had it on
movie.
my like mini list since you were like, let's do a podcast. I've had that on my list.
Cool.
I agree with you though, Colton, because like, when even beforehand, before we recorded and we're talking about like episodes that we'll do for Christmas or whatever, like you always have like the silly stuff like Silent Night, Deadly Night, like, Gremlin, stuff like that, but like stuff like this, The Shining, that's like actual like serious, like scary, that kind, like just well done winter horror. It is kind of hard. I was gonna say Dead End because that's probably my favorite Christmas one, which we reviewed, but I don't think there's any snow in it.
No, it's
at Christmas time.
It's not in a snowy place, yeah.
But it's like, it's just set it on like an undisclosed road that's probably like in California or something.
Yeah.
And the snow does, like, you need that snow. You need the depressingness.
But the snow also, like, it confines what you can do, because usually it means it's just you've got to plot around isolation or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
it's hard to control, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I liked about this movie, is that you could tell that they just went out somewhere isolated and, filmed it, because it's all real snow 100%, like the way it's the tracks in the snow. And there's even a couple of shots, I think, like when you look out on like the little ice skating rink when they do the lake shot, you can kind of see like off to the right-hand side, a lot of the snow was kind of disturbed. And it's probably because they literally had the cameras and shit out there the day before to like film the ice skating scene, which also reminded me of another little bit of a silly moment in this movie. I don't know, the movie's not very silly for a lot of points, but I thought the point when she falls through the ice, a little bit goofy for the tone of the movie. Just, I understand they were trying to like ratchet up the tension there. It was a little silly, I think, falling through the ice like that. But
there's so much, it's so still, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh god, this like dramatic like fall through the ice.
It's almost like in most movies it'd be like an action moment, right? She'd sink beneath the ice and someone would dive in after her or something. But in this, it was just a little silly beat almost.
Yeah, see, I thought they played the wrong beat with that, where we get her and she dives in the water, and then, it's like her dad, spirit or whatever, reaching up for her leg, where, to me, I was like, okay, she's gonna come up, and we're gonna realize, like, the daughter planned this, or, like, this is gonna be, like, the kids were like, she's definitely gonna fall in, this is, like, some fucking good son Macaulay Culkin shit. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah, like they're setting her up to like basically die in the water. So that's where I thought it was kind of going. Then I thought it was silly that it was like, oh no, it's just, her dad reaching for her, like, I don't know, like he's Jason Voorhees tied to a cement brick in the bottom of the lake.
The other thing I wanted to point out I think it's just a good little detail, is I thought the makeup was really good in this movie in terms of like the frostbite or like the weathering, like it was on the places on your body where you get frostbite, the tip of your nose, your cheeks, her lips, kind of like more so on the extremities of the face. I thought it was really well done. She looked pretty gnarly by the end of the movie, and it did really read that, at least by the end of it, it was like she spent some time outside in the elements, which, once again, growing up in Labrador, you see loads of people with frostbite and whatnot, and a lot of windburn and frostbite on the nose and cheeks and whatnot. So it was just, I like that there was an attention to detail here with stuff like that, where a lot of winter horror movies don't really take that into account, I guess, you know?
Yeah, and it wasn't like over the top.
No, it wasn't like her fingers and toes rotting off and stuff like that. You know, it was a tasteful amount for like how much she was exposed, pretty much.
Tasteful rot. That's what I like. So are you guys comfortable to go in the rating this bad boy?
Yeah, I think so.
So we'll land the plane, and if you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Mike, we'll start with you. What would you rate 2019's The Lodge?
I'm gonna give it a yay. I did have a few little issues with it. I was really looking forward to this. Like when I saw the trailer and the poster before it came out, I was like, oh my god, like this looks, you know, like I said, I really want to see this. I love Riley. I love depressing people isolated out in the middle of nowhere movies. So I was, I did have a fairly high expectation for it, and it mostly didn't let me down. I thought it was the paranoia and the tension and stuff, even though I knew exactly sort of what was happening for the most part. I thought it was very well done. Like it was well acted, it was well directed, the sets were beautiful, like you said, the makeup, all that. I just, had some triggering moments in it, so I enjoyed watching it, and I think it's a good movie. So it's definitely like a yay. I just don't think I'll watch it again for quite some time. Just for me reasons, you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't think it was like, the best thing I've ever seen. And I do love these like kind of turn of the screw style paranoia. Is it a ghost or is it gaslighting stories? Mm-hmm. So this was a very good take on that. It was very well done. So what about you, Ro?
So like I said, when I came into this, everyone I had read or heard just shat on it. I never like spoiled it, so I didn't know what happened or anything, but I knew like some of the other podcasts I listened to even had like running jokes about members of podcasts like hating this so much. Jeez. And being like, oh man, like hopefully this isn't another The Lodge situation.
Oh jeez.
And so watching this, like I said, it kind of hit for me. The jump scares got me. It kept me guessing. If people could only see my just me going along in my notes with the story, where I'm like trying to follow the threads, so I start the movie off with one of my notes was, I don't trust these kids one bit. And then we go on, and then I say, oh man, the reveal that she is crazy is far, far too soon. Ruins the movie. And then we keep going, and then my notes just ended with, man, fuck these kids. So it took me on the ride, and
you were along, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think this is gonna go into my regular winter rotation of films. I think I'm gonna give it a strong yay. I almost gave it a slay, but I'm thinking like The Shining got a slay, and I don't like this more than I like The Shining.
Yeah.
But I think this is like a really strong, elevated horror entry, just horror entry in general. And yeah, it does paranoia good and, all that kind of stuff. Colton, we'll go to you, and I think you have other people's ratings too.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with Gill's take. I think it was pretty fitting that she missed reviewing this religious horror movie on Easter Sunday, because she's spending it with her husband's conservative family, which is
in Republican land, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. On The Lodge, she specifically said that she really enjoyed how reminiscent of Hereditary it was, with the dollhouse and the religious cult vibes, of course, stuff that we've kind of discussed. In scoring the movie, I think she seriously wants us to reconsider naming the podcast just the Gill Slays podcast, because, she likes to slay every single movie we discuss, even though The Lodge had considerably less cringy dialogue and far fewer werewolves than Ginger Snaps. So, she's giving The Lodge a slay.
That's kind of you, because I noticed that you retooled what she said, where what she actually said was, this movie, The Lodge, is far better than this movie called Ginger Snaps.
Yeah, I didn't want to out her like that, right? I just wanted to to keep it under wraps, have a little bit of respect on her name, Yeah.
So when Colton is missing next episode, and there are wanted or missing signs posted all over town, it has nothing to do with Gill at all.
Nothing to
Just
do
throwing
with
that
it.
out there.
No. And then, yeah, my personal take, I really enjoy this movie. The first time I watched it, I was very much completely like Rowan. I had no idea about the kids. You know, I was kind of like, oh, these kids are a bit weird. And then I was along for the ride. Every single like little zig and zag, I was in lockstep with it. That I was like, okay, oh, it's this. You know, it was constantly surprising me. And I very much enjoyed, like I said, its dour tone. You know, I thought it was a very, very well done, elevated horror movie. You know, I really enjoyed it. This time when I was watching it, I basically thought that the first 60 minutes were like perfectly paced. I never even found it to be slow burn. I thought it was just incredibly enjoyable. I loved the characters, the development. But essentially, once we cut from them sitting around watching like Jack Frost and The Thing, you know, once we're in purgatory, the movie has to slow down naturally to kind of convey that we're in this purgatorial state, that nothing's happening, which then as someone who knows the greater beats and the twists and turns of the movie, I found the last 40 minutes a little slower than I would have liked. You know, basically, once we know like the jig is up and what's happening, I think it just takes a little bit longer than I would have liked to bring it all to a close. You know, it's just kind of like we're in that state for 40 minutes before it's all over. But yeah, by and large, I think it's a great movie. I think the performances are great. I don't really understand where a lot of more critical reviewers talk about like how stupid the movie is. I guess maybe it's just I missed the logical issues or whatever they're pointing at, because like a couple of people I follow on Letterboxd that are professional reviewers gave this like a 1.5 and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't see what they see. A lot of the little issues are more so like kind of what Mike was mentioning with the snow angel thing. It's like, oh, that'd take the kids a while to do these 60 perfect snow angels, right? Like it's not like a glaring issue that completely ruins the movie.
It doesn't ruin the movie, yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, for me, I'm similar to Rowan. I'd give it a yay, a very strong yay. I think it's a great movie, specifically in winter horror. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot that I can rely on, so this is a great entry there.
So we told you what we thought, and we asked what you thought of the film, and we actually got a couple responses to this one, which I didn't think was going to happen because, yet again, I forgot to post it. Didn't post it till this morning, but they came in.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Nothing to Fear podcast wrote us on. They all came through Instagram. So Nothing to Fear podcast said very intense and claustrophobic, and some good shocks throughout. So yeah, I
agree with that.
With that. A podcast on Elm Street wrote and said, love this movie. Fantastic psychological thriller. Pedal Frog wrote and just said, so upsetting! !
Agreed. Yeah.
And then Eric Wilf P wrote, and I feel like I'm maybe getting old because I had no idea if this was positive or negative. It just said, it kind of ate. And I don't know.
Yes! 8.
Okay.
I knew Mike was gonna have my back on this one. Is that a positive or a negative?
That's a positive, man.
Okay, awesome. I'm learning I'm learning the lingo of the kids here. So
one thing I forgot to mention, when they just said that it was like very isolating, claustrophobic, I thought it was interesting that when the kids try and get away at the end, they just back up wrong and get stuck in the snow. Just once again, someone who grows, Newfoundland and Labrador, everyone's used to getting like stuck in the driveway or kind of going off the path. I like that. Once again, it's just a little winter horror thing that was just like, oh shit, that's terrifying to get
It's
stuck
funny because I feel like before they panned over to actually show it, when they were staying on her, but you could hear still the kids.
The vehicle, yeah.
We all knew exactly what happened because
100%, yeah.
It happens like 5 times a winter, right?
We hear it all the time, yeah.
I could see, and I was like, oh, I was just picturing like having to fucking get the shovel and get like the fucking salt and the rocks and everything, and I was like, this would take hours to get out of.
Yeah, these kids are not going anywhere.
No,
for sure.
So yeah, I don't even know what you're gonna hear. I was gonna do 2 intros for this, but you know what? I like when the listeners get to see how the meat stuffed in the sausage. So we're going the horrific hotline. Maybe there's one. I don't know. Nicholas hasn't sent one in yet, but I do know sometimes when Rowan doesn't post about the movie till Sunday morning, like he'll send one over Sunday night. So after this, I may insert Nicholas's voicemail, but it is the holiday. I don't know if it's also the holiday like over in Germany or not. So Yeah, maybe.
I think Easter is, in a lot
it?
of the world. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I don't know. So maybe you'll hear voicemail, maybe not. Maybe this is just going to go right to Colton. Either way, this is where the horrific hotline would be.
Regarding The Lodge, I can't really rate this movie, at least not right now. I'm somewhere either at the nay or at a strong yay, actually. But I do have to watch it again. So there were a lot of things I thought were really interesting. The entire setting was great. I liked the main actress and the sequence where the mother, I think it was Alicia Silverstone, whom I haven't seen in years in a movie, brings her kids to her father, goes back and commits suicide, was really shocking. But other things were just too weird. The boy, the son was weird, and I'm not sure about the twist. It's either one of the most brilliant twists or one of the stupidest twists I have ever seen. I haven't decided yet. That's why I think I need to watch the movie again and have a look at it, knowing what's coming and make up my mind. So all I can say, it was an interesting choice, and I did somehow enjoy watching it up until the final, 20-30 minutes, and this is where it kind of shifts for me, and I'm not sure how to feel about it yet. But yeah, again, interesting movie, at least, so hope you guys had more fun or clearer thoughts on it.
Wow, I completely agree with Nicholas' take, where he at least rated this movie a yay or higher. And if it's lower, then I completely disagree. If you've been listening this long and you're not following us on our social medias already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, / or Letterboxd. Wherever there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to support the show, like our horror hounds Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, and Carvey, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Gill, and get episodes of this here main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Now, Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
Well, before I plug the playlist, Jill's on here because we didn't like her, so we made sure we timed this so she couldn't be on it. But Gill did want me to let everybody know that because she likes to run me ragged, we're going to start pumping out 2 Stream Screams a month.
Oh,
so,
okay. It's news to me as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at Colton's face thinking about how he has to do the art for 2 now.
Oh, man. It's going to take me 5 minutes each time. I'm pissed.
So, make sure you'll get double the Evil Bond 666. So,
I want to know,
that.
With the horrific playlist, I know you're not there to plug it yet, but is Nearer My God to Thee making it on the list or no?
I feel like we have to put it on. Just
what a jam.
After my whole speech offending every Christian that their music is creepy,
you gotta put it on.
So if you want to hear that when I put it on, or any other music from movies we review, or iconic horror movies, or just horror movies we love in general, go to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to our social media, go to the link tree, and the link's right in there to click, and you can go right to it, and get your spooky music on. And all that is left is to announce our upcoming episode, which it is back on me, so we know it's going to be a good pick, guys. And you know what? I didn't even time this. I had this plotted out months and months ago, but just in time for the new Evil Dead coming out, we are doing Evil Dead 2, and I am going to promise right here, right now, I don't know if it'll be a guest appearance, but at least on the horrific hotline, I will get my mother to call in and talk about this movie. She's probably going to be angry at me if I don't let her guest on the episode, because she said I'm talking about Evil Dead 2. This is like her all-time favorite movie, but
That's awesome.
we will get her somewhere in the episode. Rowan's mom's corner or something.
Yeah, I wanted to reach out to my mom as well to do a, call into the horrific hotline for this one as well, but it just, I was late watching it and whatnot. So
next one, well, the next scary like Exorcist movie or something.
Yeah, we'll have her call in.
So yeah, get your eyeballs on Evil Dead 2, and that will be the next episode. I'm so sure we will have Gill back. And I think that is everything for now. And thank you for all the support. As always, I am Rowan.
Bye, it's Mike.
And it's Colton.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
But the prime time gets.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.